Maya Rodriguez stepped off the transport shuttle and immediately knew she was in trouble. Not because of the ominous red warning signs plastered everywhere, or the fact that 3 different species of janitor were scrubbing what looked suspiciously like scorch marks off the walls. No, she knew she was in trouble because her new squad mates were already staring at her like she was a particularly disappointing lunch. "Oh, fantastic," growled Vex, the squad leader whose reptilian features made him look like someone had crossed an iguana with a very angry middle manager. "They gave us the human." Standing next to him was Clank, a robot whose chrome finish had clearly seen better days. His optical sensors whirred as they focused on Maya. "Statistical analysis indicates a 97.4% probability of mission failure with organic human inclusion," he announced cheerfully. "This should be entertaining." The third member of her new family was Zoop, a translucent blob creature who literally bounced when excited. Which, judging by the way he was vibrating, was apparently right now. Ooh, is it true humans leak salt water from their optical sensors when distressed? Can we make it happen? Please. Maya set down her duffel bag and looked around the Galactic Defense Academy's reception area. Nexus Prime was supposed to be the most prestigious military training facility in known space. Right now, it looked more like a combination boot camp and gladiator arena, with just a hint of abandon all hope. "Ye who enter here." "Let me guess," Maya said, adjusting her uniform. "You 3 are the welcoming committee?" "Welcome to Squad Omega," Vex said with all the enthusiasm of someone reading a funeral announcement. "Also known as the expendable newbie squad. Also known as the place where military careers go to die horrible, screaming deaths. The mortality rate for Squad Omega is currently sitting at 86%, Clank added helpfully. Though that was before we got assigned a soft mammal with emotional regulation issues. "Hey now," Maya said, hefting her bag. "I'll have you know I have excellent emotional regulation. I once spent 6 hours in a confined space with an angry 300-pound. "Nobody cares about your human problems," Vex interrupted. "Here's how this works. You do what we say when we say it, and maybe you'll live long enough to wash out like a normal failure instead of getting eaten by something with too many teeth." Zoop bounced higher. "Speaking of teeth, did you know the Academy keeps live specimens for training purposes? Last week, a Kravek stalker ate half of Squad Beta. It was hilarious." Maya blinked. "Half of them?" "Just the lower halves," Clank clarified. "Very clean cuts. Quite impressive, really." "Right," Maya said slowly. "And this is considered normal?" "Normal?" Vex's laugh sounded like gravel in a blender. "Kid, normal doesn't exist here. This academy has one job: turn raw recruits into weapons capable of handling the galaxy's worst nightmares. Most species last about 2 weeks before they realize they're in way over their heads. Humans typically last 4 days, Clank noted. Though that's counting the 3 days it takes for them to stop crying and actually attempt a training exercise." Maya looked at her new squad mates and smiled. It wasn't a particularly reassuring smile. In fact, if any of them had spent time around Earth's apex predators, they might have recognized it as the same expression a wolf wore when it had found something interesting to hunt. "Well then," she said, slinging her bag over her shoulder, "this should be fun." The next morning, Maya discovered that Galactic Defense Academy training made military boot camps look like luxury spas. Their first exercise involved navigating an obstacle course while being chased by actual carnivorous plants. Not holographic ones, not simulated ones, actual, honest-to-goodness plants that wanted to turn them into fertilizer. "The snapping thorn bushes have been particularly aggressive this week," announced Instructor Grawl, a massive bear-like creature whose idea of encouragement was not immediately mauling his students. "Try not to get digested. It makes paperwork complicated." Vex, Clank, and Zoop approached the course with military precision, scanning for threats and planning tactical approaches. Maya walked up to the starting line and cracked her knuckles. "Okay, human," Vex said. Here's the plan. You go first, draw their attention, and scream loudly when you get eaten so we know where they are. Solid strategy, Maya agreed. Very thoughtful. What happened next would have been hilarious if it wasn't so utterly baffling. Maya didn't run through the obstacle course. She didn't dodge and weave around the snapping plants. Instead, she walked calmly through the garden of death, occasionally pausing to examine a particularly aggressive specimen. When a massive thorn bush lunged at her with jaws that could snap a steel beam, Maya simply stepped to the side and made a soft clicking sound with her tongue. The plant actually hesitated. "What the hell?" Vex muttered. It got weirder. Maya finished the course in record time, completely unscathed, while the plants seemed almost confused by her presence. When her squad mates caught up, they found her sitting on a bench, looking perfectly relaxed. How? Clank's processors were clearly struggling with this data. Statistical probability of survival was less than 12%. "Oh, you just have to understand their behavioral patterns," Maya said casually. "Snapping thorn bushes are ambush predators. They rely on fear responses and erratic movement to trigger their attack reflexes. Stay calm, move deliberately, and they get confused." Zoop bounced excitedly. "But you're supposed to be terrified. You're a human. You're supposed to leak from your optical sensors and make distressing noises." "Sorry to disappoint," Maya said. "Growing up on the farm, you learn to deal with difficult animals." The next exercise was worse. Combat training against holographic opponents quickly escalated to combat training against real opponents when someone accidentally activated the nightmare difficulty setting. Suddenly, Squad Omega found themselves facing a pack of razor wolves, each one roughly the size of a small hover car and approximately twice as mean. Vex immediately started barking tactical orders. Clank began calculating optimal retreat routes. Zoop turned a shade of purple that probably indicated panic. Maya just sighed and stepped forward. "Down," she said firmly. The lead razor wolf, mid-lunge, actually stopped and tilted its head in confusion. "I said down," Maya repeated, using the same tone someone might use with an unruly puppy. "Sit." The wolf sat. "Good boy," Maya said, reaching out to scratch behind its ears. The supposedly deadly predator's tail actually started wagging. "This is impossible," Vex whispered. "Razor wolves don't have pack bonding instincts with alien species. They're programmed killing machines." "They're also highly intelligent and social creatures," Maya said, now surrounded by a pack of wolves who were acting like oversized dogs. "They respond well to confident leadership and clear boundaries. Back home, we had a few that needed behavioral rehabilitation." "Behavioral rehabilitation?" Clank queried. "Yeah, they'd been traumatized by previous experiences with humanoids. Took about 6 months to rebuild their trust, but once you establish yourself as a benevolent pack leader, they're actually quite affectionate." By the end of the week, word had spread throughout the academy about Squad Omega's mysterious human recruit. Maya had somehow sweet-talked a venomous crystal spider into not liquefying her internal organs, convinced a murder hawk to perch on her shoulder like a friendly parrot, and actually got a bone crusher to roll over for belly rubs. "I don't understand it," Vex confided to Clank during their evening briefing. "She's supposed to be the weak link. Humans are emotional, fragile, and completely unsuited for military service. Perhaps our assessment of human capabilities requires recalibration," Clank suggested. "Her success rate with hostile fauna is statistically impossible unless she possesses specialized knowledge." "What kind of farm did she grow up on?" Zoop wondered aloud. They were about to find out, because Instructor Grawl had just announced the final trial. The one that would determine whether Squad Omega graduated to active duty or got shipped back to their home worlds in small, easily mailable pieces. "Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted beings," Grawl announced, his voice carrying across the Academy's main courtyard. "Tomorrow, you face the Shadow Maw." A collective shudder went through every cadet present. The Shadow Maw was legend, a creature so dangerous that in 300 years of Academy history, no cadet had ever faced it and lived to tell about it. Your mission is simple, Grawl continued. Retrieve the beacon from the Shadow Maw's hunting ground. Return alive if possible, but return with the beacon regardless. Maya raised her hand. Question about the Shadow Maw. What's its primary behavioral pattern? Grawl stared at her. Its primary behavioral pattern, Cadet Rodriguez, is eating everything that moves. Right, but what triggers the feeding response? Is it territorial aggression, hunger-driven predation, or defensive behavior? It doesn't matter what triggers it, Vex hissed. The point is not to trigger it at all. Maya just nodded thoughtfully. Okay, but it's always good to understand what you're working with. That night, while her squad mates lay awake contemplating their impending doom, Maya slept like a baby. She was actually looking forward to tomorrow. The briefing room buzzed with nervous energy as 50 cadets prepared to learn exactly how they were going to die. Instructor Grawl stood at the front, looking like he was about to deliver bad news to someone's relatives. The Shadow Maw, he began, activating a holographic display, is the apex predator of the Keth Nebula. 15 feet tall, razor-sharp claws, acidic saliva, and a brain sophisticated enough to set traps for its prey. The hologram showed a creature that looked like someone had taken a tiger, a bear, and a nightmare, then scaled it up to small building size. In the past century, 17 military squads have attempted to engage the Shadow Maw in combat. Current survivors, 0. Current remains recovered, also 0, because it dissolves bones for easier digestion. Zoop made a whimpering sound that translated roughly to why did I join the military instead of becoming an accountant like my mother wanted. However, Grawl continued, the Academy Board has determined that facing impossible odds builds character. Your mission is to infiltrate the Shadow Maw's hunting ground, retrieve the emergency beacon from the center of its territory, and extract without becoming lunch. Squad Alpha, led by a hulking Centaurian named Bruxex, immediately began planning their assault. Heavy plasma cannons, Brux declared. Orbital bombardment. We blast everything in a 3-mile radius and collect the beacon from the crater. Squad Beta opted for stealth technology and advanced cloaking devices. Squad Gamma chose the time-honored tradition of bringing enough explosives to level a small moon. Squad Omega gathered in their corner to plan their certain demise. All right, Vex said, spreading out tactical maps. Here's our strategy. Maya goes in first, makes lots of noise, attracts the Shadow Maw's attention. While it's busy eating her, the rest of us sneak in, grab the beacon, and get out. That's your plan? Maya asked. Use me as bait? It's a solid plan, Vex insisted. You're the expendable member of the squad. That's literally your job description. Plus, Clank added, statistical analysis indicates you have a 0% survival probability regardless of tactical approach. At least this way, your death serves a purpose. Zoop bounced apologetically. We'll make sure your sacrifice is remembered. For at least a week. Maybe 2 if it's particularly gruesome. Maya looked at her squad mates with something that might have been affection if you squinted hard enough. You know what? That sounds like a perfectly reasonable plan. I'll be your bait. Vex blinked in surprise. You're not going to argue? Demand a better position? Cry about the unfairness of it all? Nope, Maya said cheerfully. I'm totally fine with getting up close and personal with the Shadow Maw. But you'll be killed, Clank pointed out helpfully. Probably not, Maya said. But thanks for the concern. What do you mean, probably not? Vex demanded. It's the most dangerous predator in known space. Maya shrugged. Back home we had this saying, there's no such thing as a dangerous animal, only dangerous situations. The trick is understanding what kind of situation you're actually in. And what kind of situation do you think this is? Zoop asked. No. Well, Maya said, studying the holographic display of the shadow maw, from what I can see, this looks like a classic case of an apex predator that's been isolated, overstimulated, and probably suffering from chronic stress due to environmental factors. Her squad mates stared at her blankly. What I'm saying is, Maya continued, the shadow maw isn't evil. It's just misunderstood. Misunderstood? Vex's voice cracked. It's killed dozens of trained military personnel. Yeah, but look at the circumstances, Maya said, pulling up the historical data. Every encounter involved armed squads approaching its territory with aggressive intent. Of course it defended itself. Any animal would. It's not just any animal, Clank protested. It's a monster. No, Maya said quietly. It's not. Trust me on this one. Back home, I worked with plenty of creatures that everyone called monsters. You'd be amazed what proper technique and a little patience can accomplish. Vex was starting to get a very uncomfortable feeling about this conversation. Maya, exactly what kind of farm did you grow up on? Oh, you know, Maya said casually. Just a little wildlife preservation ranch. We specialized in behavioral rehabilitation for species that other facilities couldn't handle. What kind of species? Clank asked, though his vocal processors had developed a slight tremor that suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Well, Maya said, counting on her fingers. Let's see. We had a few Kodiak bears that had been traumatized by poachers. A pack of wolves that needed socialization training. A couple of great white sharks that had developed trust issues. Oh, and there was this one Siberian tiger named Boris who had anger management problems. Zoop's color had shifted to a pale yellow that probably indicated existential dread. You worked with Earth apex predators? For fun. For rehabilitation, Maya corrected. Though it was pretty fun once you got the hang of it. Boris was actually a sweetheart once he learned to express his emotions in healthier ways. Vex felt like the universe was playing a particularly cruel joke on him. So when you say you grew up on a farm, I grew up on Earth's most dangerous wildlife rehabilitation center, Maya confirmed. My parents specialized in helping apex predators overcome trauma and reintegrate into healthy behavioral patterns. And you think this will help you with the shadow maw? Clank asked. Maya smiled that same unsettling smile from the day she'd arrived. I think the shadow maw is about to have the best day it's had in years. The hunting ground looked exactly like what you'd expect from a place where hope went to die. Dark, twisted trees created a canopy so thick that noon looked like twilight. The ground was littered with bones, weapons, and the occasional piece of military equipment that someone had dropped while running for their life. Cheerful place, Maya commented, adjusting her pack. Really has that abandon all hope aesthetic down pat. Squad Alpha had charged in 20 minutes ago with enough firepower to level a city block. The screaming had stopped about 15 minutes ago, which was either a very good sign or a very bad one. Given the circumstantial evidence, Squad Omega was betting on bad. Tactical assessment, Vex whispered into his comm unit. The hunting ground appears to be a maze designed to funnel prey into kill zones. Visibility is limited, escape routes are minimal, and something just roared in the distance that made my spinal plates rattle. Squad Beta has gone silent, Clank reported, monitoring radio frequencies. Squad Gamma's last transmission was approximately 7 minutes ago and consisted primarily of screaming. Zoop had turned a shade of green that indicated maximum terror. Can we go home now? I just remembered I left my thermal regulator running. Nobody's going home until we get that beacon, Vex said grimly. Maya, you're up. Go make some noise and attract thee. The roar that interrupted him didn't sound like it came from any earthly creature. It was the sound of pure predatory fury, echoing through the trees with enough force to shake leaves from branches. On second thought, Vex said, maybe we should reconsider our. The Shadow Maw stepped into the clearing, and every description Maya had heard suddenly seemed inadequate. It wasn't just big, it was architecture. 15 feet of muscle, claw, and teeth, moving with the fluid grace of something that had never encountered an opponent it couldn't kill. Its eyes locked onto Squad Omega with the focused intensity of a creature that had found its next meal. Vex raised his plasma rifle. Clank activated every defensive protocol he had. Zoop tried to hide behind a tree that was considerably smaller than he was. Maya stepped forward. "Easy there, big guy," she said in the same calm tone she might use to greet a neighbor's dog. "Nobody's here to hurt you." The Shadow Maw paused, tilting its massive head. In 300 years of Academy history, no one had ever approached it without weapons drawn and tactics screaming. "Look at you," Maya continued, taking another step closer. "You're magnificent. But you're stressed, aren't you? All these people coming into your territory with guns and explosives. That's got to be exhausting." "Maya," Vex hissed. "What are you doing?" "Behavioral assessment," Maya replied quietly. "Look at its posture. Ears back, tail low, muscles tensed but not in attack position. This isn't aggression. This is defensive anxiety." The Shadow Maw took a step closer, and Maya could see the intelligence in its eyes. Behind the predatory focus was something else, something that looked almost like loneliness. "How long have you been stuck here?" Maya asked softly. "How long since you've had any interaction that wasn't someone trying to kill you?" She reached slowly into her pack and pulled out a ration bar. Not exactly gourmet dining, but it was food offered without threat. "I bet you don't even get proper meals anymore," Maya said, breaking the bar in half and offering it. "Just whatever Academy cadets you catch. That's no way to live." The Shadow Maw sniffed the air, its massive nostrils flaring. Then, moving with surprising delicacy for something the size of a small building, it lowered its head and gently took the food from Maya's outstretched hand. "There we go," Maya said, reaching up to scratch behind the creature's ear. "You're just a big softy, aren't you?" Vex's plasma rifle clattered to the ground. "This is impossible," he whispered. "The Shadow Maw doesn't form social bonds with other species. It's a solitary apex predator." "It's a highly intelligent apex predator," Maya corrected, continuing to pet the massive creature, which was now making a sound suspiciously similar to purring. "Probably more intelligent than most of the people who've been sent to fight it. Which means it's been spending years dealing with the psychological stress of constant combat without any positive social interaction." The Shadow Maw rolled over onto its side, exposing its belly in the universal animal gesture of trust. "Oh, you want belly rubs?" Maya laughed, obliging the massive predator. "Back home, we had a tiger named Boris who loved belly rubs. Though you're quite a bit bigger than Boris was." Clank's optical sensors were spinning wildly as he tried to process what he was witnessing. "Statistical analysis error," he mumbled. "Data does not compute. Reality appears to be malfunctioning." Zoop had gone completely transparent, which was apparently his species' equivalent of fainting. Maya looked around the clearing and spotted the beacon, sitting on a pedestal about 50 yards away. "Hey there, beautiful," she said to the Shadow Maw. "Mind if we grab that shiny thing over there? We need it for our graduation test." The Shadow Maw looked where she was pointing, then back at Maya. Then it stood up, walked over to the beacon, picked it up in its massive jaws, and brought it back to her like a well-trained dog playing fetch. "Good boy," Maya said, accepting the beacon and giving the creature another scratch behind the ears. "You're the best apex predator in the galaxy, yes you are." The Shadow Maw preened at the praise. "This is not happening," Vex muttered. "I'm having a stress-induced hallucination. That's the only logical explanation." "Actually," Maya said, This is exactly what I expected. The shadow maw isn't a monster. It's just been treated like one for so long that everyone forgot what it actually is. What is it? Clank asked weakly. Maya smiled and gave the massive predator one more affectionate pat. It's lonely. The shadow maw, as it turned out, was an excellent conversationalist once you got past the language barrier. Maya had spent the better part of an hour learning its communication patterns, which consisted of various growls, purrs, and body language cues that were remarkably similar to big cats back on Earth. So you've been stuck in this hunting ground for what, 15 years? Maya asked, interpreting a series of low rumbles. No wonder you're stressed. That's no life for an apex predator. The shadow maw made a sound that might have been agreement, if agreement sounded like a diesel engine with feelings. Vex, Clank, and Zoop watched this interspecies bonding session from what they considered a safe distance, which was approximately as far away as possible while still being in the same time zone. She's talking to it, Zoop whispered, having regained enough consciousness to observe the situation. The human is having a conversation with the most dangerous predator in known space. Not just talking, Clank observed, his sensors working overtime. She's interpreting its behavioral responses and adapting her communication style accordingly. The statistical probability of successful interspecies communication with an undocumented apex predator is less than. Don't, Vex interrupted. Just don't give me the numbers. I don't think my brain can handle any more impossibility today. Maya had moved on from basic communication to what appeared to be some kind of behavioral assessment. She was examining the shadow maw's claws, checking its teeth, and running her hands along its massive frame with the confident professionalism of a veterinarian. Your muscle tension is terrible, she told the creature. When's the last time you had proper exercise? Not fighting for your life, I mean actual healthy physical activity. The shadow maw's response suggested it had been a while. I thought so, Maya said. You're showing all the classic signs of chronic stress and environmental depression. Back home, we called this captivity syndrome. It happens to intelligent predators when they're kept in artificial environments without proper stimulation. She turned to address her squad mates. Hey guys, come over here. I want to show you something. Absolutely not, Vex replied immediately. I am staying right here in my designated not being eaten zone. It's safe, Maya assured him. Look, watch this. She pointed at a spot on the ground about 10 feet away. Shadow maw, can you move over there for me? The massive predator immediately complied, settling down exactly where Maya had indicated. Now roll over. The shadow maw rolled over. Play dead. The creature flopped onto its side and went completely limp, tongue lolling out in a display that would have been hilarious if it wasn't absolutely terrifying. Good boy, Maya praised, and the shadow maw immediately perked up, tail wagging like an enormous, deadly puppy. Clank's processors were making concerning grinding noises. This violates approximately 17 different laws of xenobiology, he announced. Apex predators do not exhibit pack bonding behaviors with alien species. They do not respond to positive reinforcement training. And they definitely do not play dead on command. They do if you approach them correctly, Maya said. The problem is, everyone who's ever encountered the shadow maw has treated it like a mindless killing machine. But look at it. Really look. Against their better judgment, Squad Omega looked. What they saw was not the soulless monster of Academy legend, but an intelligent creature that seemed almost pitifully eager for positive attention. It's been alone in this hunting ground for 15 years, Maya continued. No social interaction except people trying to kill it. No environmental enrichment, no mental stimulation, nothing but endless cycles of violence and isolation. Of course it became defensive and aggressive. Any creature would. She reached into her pack and pulled out another ration bar. The shadow maw immediately sat up at attention like a dog waiting for a treat. The Academy has been using it as a training tool, Maya said, breaking the bar into pieces, but they never considered its psychological needs. It's not just a weapon. It's a living being with complex emotional requirements. You're giving it therapy, Vex said slowly. You're giving the galaxy's most dangerous apex predator therapy. Behavioral rehabilitation, Maya corrected. And it's working. Look how much calmer it is now that it's had some positive social interaction. The Shadow Maw was indeed calmer. Instead of the tense, aggressive posture they'd expected, it was relaxed and alert, watching Maya with what could only be described as affection. So what happens now? Zoop asked. Do we just leave it here to go back to its old life? Maya looked around the hunting ground with obvious distaste. Not if I have anything to say about it. This environment is completely unsuitable for a creature of this intelligence and sophistication. Maya, Vex said carefully, you can't just relocate the Academy's primary training obstacle. Watch me, Maya replied, scratching the Shadow Maw under the chin. This beautiful creature deserves better than being someone's training dummy. The Shadow Maw purred, a sound like distant thunder mixed with contentment. Besides, Maya added, I have a feeling the Academy might be interested in alternative training methods, especially once they see what positive reinforcement can accomplish. She stood up and brushed dirt off her uniform. Come on, big guy. Let's go introduce you to some people who need to learn about proper animal husbandry. The Shadow Maw stood and followed her toward the extraction point, moving with the easy confidence of a creature that had finally found someone who understood it. Squad Omega trailed behind, still trying to process what they'd witnessed. I'm never making fun of humans again, Zoop declared. Agreed, said Clank. Clearly our species assessment protocols require complete recalibration. Vex just shook his head. Maya Rodriguez, he muttered, you are without question the most terrifying member of this squad. Maya heard him and grinned. Thanks, Vex. That might be the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Behind them, the Shadow Maw made a sound that, if you didn't know better, you might mistake for laughter. The Academy's main courtyard had never been this quiet. 50 cadets, a dozen instructors, and the entire command staff stood in stunned silence as Maya Rodriguez walked calmly across the parade ground, followed by the Shadow Maw, who was behaving like the galaxy's largest and most dangerous therapy dog. Sit, Maya said when they reached the center of the courtyard. The Shadow Maw sat. Stay. No gun. The creature remained perfectly still while Maya walked over to Instructor Grawl and handed him the beacon. Mission accomplished, sir, she reported with military precision. Squad Omega successfully retrieved the beacon and returned without casualties. Grawl stared at the beacon, then at Maya, then at the massive apex predator that was now lying down and apparently taking a nap in the middle of his parade ground. Cadet Rodriguez, he said slowly, would you care to explain why the Shadow Maw is here? Well, sir, Maya replied, it turns out the Shadow Maw was suffering from chronic environmental stress due to social isolation and inadequate living conditions. I've begun implementing a basic behavioral rehabilitation program, and the results have been quite promising. Behavioral rehabilitation, Grawl repeated. Yes, sir. The creature's aggressive responses were actually defensive behaviors triggered by years of negative reinforcement. With proper handling and positive social interaction, it's proving to be quite docile and trainable. Squad Omega stood nearby, still processing their new reality. Vex had spent the entire walk back composing a mental apology letter to every human he'd ever insulted. Clank was running continuous diagnostic checks on his logic processors, convinced they must be malfunctioning. Zoop had turned a shade of blue that indicated profound philosophical confusion. She made the Shadow Maw roll over, Zoop whispered to anyone who would listen. The apex predator of the Keth Nebula rolled over for belly rubs. Statistical impossibility confirmed, Clank added. I have witnessed events that violate the fundamental laws of xenobiology. I think, Vex said quietly. We may have underestimated human capabilities. Commander Asterion, the Academy's commanding officer, approached the group with the careful movements of someone who wasn't entirely sure reality was functioning properly. Cadet Rodriguez, he said, in 300 years of Academy history, no one has ever successfully completed the Shadow Maw trial. Most candidates don't even survive the encounter. Yes, sir, Maya replied. I can see why. The previous approach treated the Shadow Maw as a hostile enemy rather than a complex individual with specific behavioral needs. And your approach? Treat it with respect, establish trust through positive reinforcement, and address its underlying psychological requirements, Maya said matter-of-factly. Basic animal psychology, really. The Shadow Maw chose that moment to wake up from its nap and notice Maya was no longer next to it. The massive creature immediately got to its feet and padded over to her side, where it sat down and leaned against her with enough force to knock over a small building. Maya barely budged. Good boy, she said, scratching behind its ear. The resulting purr made several nearby windows vibrate. Commander Asterion watched this display with the expression of someone whose entire worldview was undergoing rapid recalibration. Cadet Rodriguez, he said finally, how would you feel about redesigning our apex predator training protocols? I'd be honored, sir, Maya replied. Though I should mention that the Shadow Maw's current living situation is completely inadequate for a creature of its intelligence and social needs. What would you recommend? Well, for starters, it needs a proper habitat with environmental enrichment, regular social interaction, and a diet that doesn't consist entirely of failed Academy cadets. And you believe you could manage such a project? Maya looked up at the Shadow Maw, who was now making happy rumbling sounds while she petted it. I think we understand each other pretty well. Over the following weeks, Squad Omega became the most requested training unit in Academy history. Word had spread throughout the galactic military community about the human who could make apex predators sit, stay, and play fetch. Maya found herself fielding requests from military installations across known space, all dealing with their own impossible creature problems. The Centauri Defense Force wants to know if you can help with their Void Kraken situation, Vex reported, reading through Maya's latest batch of correspondence. Apparently, it's been eating their communications satellites. Void Krakens are just territorial, Maya said absently, reviewing architectural plans for the Shadow Maw's new habitat. They probably need better environmental boundaries and some form of mental stimulation. The Rigel colony is having trouble with a pack of quantum wolves that keep phasing through their defensive barriers, Clank added. Quantum wolves are pack hunters with complex social hierarchies, Maya replied. I bet they're just looking for a new alpha. Standard dominance establishment protocols should work. Zoop bounced excitedly. Ooh, and there's a request from the Outer Rim about something called a reality devourer that's been eating their space stations. Maya paused in her work. Okay, that one might actually be dangerous. Really? Vex asked hopefully. Yeah, Maya said with a grin. Reality devourers are notoriously difficult to house train. The Shadow Maw, now living in a spacious habitat complete with climbing structures, swimming pools, and regular feeding schedules, had become something of an Academy mascot. Visitors often found it playing fetch with Maya or demonstrating various training commands for impressed military officials. You know, Vex said one evening as Squad Omega watched Maya teaching the Shadow Maw to shake hands, I'm starting to think humans might be the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Why? Clank asked. Because of their capacity for violence? No, Vex replied, watching the galaxy's most feared apex predator roll over for belly rubs. Because they can turn anything into a pet. Maya looked up from where she was giving the Shadow Maw what appeared to be a professional massage. We prefer the term behavioral partners, she said. Though I suppose pet works too. Maya, Zoop asked, his curiosity finally overcoming his lingering terror. What exactly did your parents do at that wildlife preservation ranch? Maya's smile took on that familiar, slightly unsettling quality. Oh, you know. The usual. Mom specialized in apex predator psychology, and Dad handled the really difficult cases, creatures that other facilities had given up on. Define really difficult, Clank requested, though his vocal processor suggested he wasn't entirely sure he wanted the answer. Well, Maya said thoughtfully, there was the time they rehabilitated a Yellowstone grizzly that had developed trust issues after being shot by poachers. Took 2 years of intensive therapy. But he eventually learned to paint landscapes with his claws. His work is actually displayed in several galleries now. Bears, Vex said slowly, don't typically engage in artistic expression. Not typically, no, but Bruno had a real talent for it once he worked through his emotional trauma. Maya gave the Shadow Maw a final pat and stood up. Then there was the family of orcas that had been separated from their pod. Dad spent 6 months living on a floating platform, teaching them how to trust humans again. Your father lived with killer whales? Zoop's color had shifted to something that might have indicated either awe or existential dread. They're not actually killers, Maya said. That's just bad marketing. Orcas are incredibly intelligent, emotionally complex creatures. They just need proper socialization and mental stimulation. She gestured toward the Shadow Maw, who was now dozing contentedly in a patch of artificial sunlight. Same principle applies here. The Shadow Maw isn't evil or monstrous. It was just bored, lonely, and stressed. Give it proper care and attention, and it becomes exactly what it always was, a magnificent apex predator with a gentle soul. The next morning brought a priority message from Galactic Command. Maya found herself standing in Commander Asterian's office, facing a holographic projection of Fleet Admiral Korath, the highest-ranking military officer in known space. Cadet Rodriguez, the Admiral began, his 4 arms gesturing emphatically. I've been hearing some rather extraordinary reports about your methods. Yes, sir, Maya replied. I hope they've been positive. Positive? Admiral Korath laughed, a sound like grinding metal. The Andorian Defense Force says you solved their century-old dragon problem in 3 days. The Tau Ceti colonies report that their nightmare swarm is now helping with construction projects. And apparently the Vegan Republic wants to hire you as their official impossible creature consultant. The galaxy's a big place with a lot of misunderstood apex predators, Maya said modestly. Indeed. Which brings me to why I'm contacting you directly. The Admiral's expression became serious. We have a situation in the Outer Rim. Something we've been calling the Leviathan Crisis. Maya perked up with interest. What kind of Leviathan? Space-dwelling, roughly the size of a small moon, and it's been collecting our ships. Collecting them. Ma'am. Not destroying them, Admiral Korath clarified. Collecting them. It gathers entire fleets and keeps them in some kind of protective barrier around its body. Our people are safe, but they can't leave and we can't get them out. Maya's eyes lit up with the expression she usually got when faced with an interesting behavioral puzzle. How long has this been going on? 6 months. We've tried everything, diplomatic contact, military force, even offering it tribute. Nothing works. Sir, Maya said carefully, has anyone considered that maybe the Leviathan isn't attacking our ships? What do you mean? Well, if it's keeping the crews safe and not harming them, maybe it's not aggressive behavior. Maybe it's something else entirely. Admiral Korath leaned forward in the hologram. Such as? Maya smiled that unsettling smile again. Maybe it's lonely. Maybe it's trying to make friends, and it just doesn't understand that spaceships aren't toys. There was a long silence as the Admiral processed this possibility. Cadet Rodriguez, he said finally, how would you feel about a field promotion and an immediate assignment to the Outer Rim? I'd be honored, sir, Maya replied, though I should probably bring my team. We work well together. Squad Omega exchanged glances. Vex cleared his throat. Sir, if I may. We've learned not to question Cadet Rodriguez's methods. If she says she can help a moon-sized space creature work through its emotional issues, then that's probably exactly what's going to happen. Agreed, Clank added. Statistical analysis of Maya's success rate with impossible situations indicates a 99.7% probability of positive outcomes. Zoop bounced excitedly. Plus, we want to see what happens when she tries to teach something the size of a moon to sit and stay. 6 months later, the Leviathan crisis had become the Leviathan solution. The massive space creature, now known affectionately as Big Blue due to its azure coloration, had become the Outer Rim's most effective traffic controller and search and rescue coordinator. It turned out the creature hadn't been capturing ships at all. It had been trying to help lost vessels find their way home and protecting damaged ships until rescue could arrive. Maya had spent 3 weeks living aboard a specially constructed habitat pod, learning Big Blue's communication methods and teaching it more effective ways to interact with smaller beings. The result was a partnership that revolutionized space travel in the Outer Rim sectors. You know, Vex said, watching Maya direct Big Blue through a complex rescue operation involving a damaged cargo hauler, I'm starting to think the galaxy's been doing this whole apex predator thing completely wrong. How so? Maya asked, not looking away from her work with the massive creature. Well, we've always assumed that if something was dangerous we had to fight it or avoid it, Vex explained. But you've proven that most of the time we just need to understand it. Maya smiled and gave Big Blue an affectionate pat on what might have been its flank, if creatures the size of moons could be said to have flanks. That's the thing about apex predators, she said. They're not monsters, they're just really, really good at what they do. And what most of them do best is form strong social bonds and protect the things they care about. She looked back at Squad Omega, her expression warm with genuine affection. Same principle applies to annoying alien squadmates, really. Vex felt something that might have been emotion, if Saurians were capable of such things. Maya Rodriguez, he said formally, I owe you an apology. When you first arrived, I thought humans were weak, emotional, and completely unsuited for military service. And now? Maya asked. Now I think humans might be the most terrifyingly effective species in the galaxy, Vex replied. You don't conquer apex predators. You make them want to conquer things for you. Maya laughed, and somewhere in the distance Big Blue's response rumbled through space like cosmic thunder mixed with joy. Welcome to Earth's secret weapon, she said. We don't just survive in a universe full of apex predators. We adopt them. And in the vast darkness of space, surrounded by creatures that most beings would consider nightmares, Squad Omega had never felt safer. After all, when you had Maya Rodriguez on your team, even the monsters wanted to be your friend.